You don't need to take away your foods. Or foods is part of who we are. And quite frankly, like food enjoyment is nutrition as well. And if we're taking away the foods that we enjoy, then our health is not going to be optimal if we're miserable eating the foods that are better for you, which isn't the case because we know that Hispanic food is very much nutrient dense. It is very plant forward.
Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious, the podcast where we dive into the intersection of culture and nutrition. I'm your host, Arely Gutierrez, a Latina registered dietitian, and I'm here to explore how cultural inclusivity can transform our approach to food, health, and well-being. Each episode aims to empower you to better understand and serve diverse communities with practical insights, personal stories, and expert advice. If you find this podcast valuable, don't forget to hit that follow button, leave us a review, and share it on your socials. You can find us as @Food Culture Curious. Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. My name is Arely. I'm a registered dietitian on a mission to promote cultural inclusion in the nutrition space. Today we have with us Gisela Bouvier. She's an Argentine registered dietitian, mom of 3, TV host, and entrepreneur with 17 years of experience, delivering nutrition education to the masses through English and Spanish media. As the founder of Gisela Bouvier Nutrition and the co-host of El Flash Latino, she partners with brands and organizations to make realistic, culturally relevant nutrition simple, accessible, and sustainable for families nationwide. Welcome, Gisela.
Thank you so much, Arely.
All right, so I know you're going to be an amazing guest because you have all this experience with media. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to learn about Argentinian food culture. So we can go ahead and get started. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the food culture.
Absolutely. So I am a first generation American. My entire family is from Argentina. I was born and raised in Miami, but now I live in a small town in Southwest Florida called Punta Gorda. But if you ask anybody from here, it's called Punta Gorda. So I am a mom of 3. My kids are 10, 4, and 2, and I've been a dietitian a really long time. But I started my media business about 9 years ago, and I really found that we needed more education in Spanish. And thanks to my partnerships, there's been more commodity boards and food brands more open to being able to provide that education to the Hispanic community in their language. Because I feel like growing up, I saw segments of pretty much only mazola, cacique, and goya, but never about why these foods are good for you. And so I really want to tie in the piece of, yes, integrate them, but then why are they beneficial for you and try to take away the misconceptions or misinformation that there are in the Hispanic community that we know are many because your abuelita, your amiga, your mom, your sister told you. And so that's my goal.
That's crazy. And we will get into the myths because there are so many.
So
And I
many.
love talking about that. But I met you, or I can't remember if it was the first time I met you, but I know we got a chance to talk at one of the dairy events,
Mhm.
and you were talking about how you're super passionate about sharing about Argentinian food culture because not a lot of people know what it is, what it consists of. And I know, especially in the United States, I feel like everyone gets blanketed towards more of the Mexican American food culture. They just assume that's all of Latin America.
Mhm.
So I want you to educate us a little bit more about what is Argentinian food culture. What were some staples growing up in your household? Let's start a little bit with the proteins.
Yeah, so in Argentina, it's el asado. So it's very much a cattle type of state. I mean, they raise cattle like crazy. So it is a beef industry. And growing up, like any celebration, any gathering, any like voy para tu casa el fin de semana is un asado. So it's particularly skirt steak, which is entraña, or vacío, which is a little bit thicker. And I don't know what the translation in that is in English. But then things like morcilla and chorizo were also very traditional. And that was the main proteins. Now they do eat chicken, like for every day, they will eat chicken, like chicken breast or un arroz con pollo. They're not big on eating rice as a side. Like that's, I didn't grow up on that too much. Or legumes. We eat a lot of legumes, but it was more like una ensalada the garbanzos type of thing as opposed to like beans being hot. It's changed a little bit over the years, but protein would be definitely steak. They do fish, but more in like in la costa, less in like Buenos Aires. It's just not as affordable. And what's really hard to find is like turkey. Now things are a little bit different because of the economic situation. But growing up, we didn't eat pork because that you really ate it in like jamon serrano and like salami and things like that and the cured meats. But eating pork like as a pork loin or pork chop or un asado de cerdo, I didn't eat that at all. So it's really was the asado was, I guess, the primary protein. And things like chili con carne, like definitely the beef.
Okay, so heavy on the beef. And you said pork isn't too prominent. Was that because it's not the right climate to raise pigs or?
It's definitely changed because pork is a more affordable protein and things have changed since I've grown up the past 30 years in Argentina, but
Mhm.
it just wasn't raised as much as cattle was. I mean, the statistic back in the day was like 40 cows per person or something, like how much cattle they raised then. I don't even know what the stat is now. But because it costs so much to raise cattle, they've started eating more pork, from my understanding. But it started to shift just because people needed to acclimate. And you didn't only eat like protein for beef, but they also do a lot of pasta because there's a lot of Italian influence in Argentina.
That's interesting. So you mentioned that rice isn't actually as popular,
Hmm.
and beans, you would only have them more like as a cold side versus like a hot,
Yeah.
like
Hot
refried beans
side.
or something
Hmm.
like that. So what were some common starches? You mentioned pasta. What are some
Yeah.
common starches?
Potatoes are huge in Argentina. Ensalada de papa, ensalada rusa, papa fritas, papa horneada. Like actually, my grandfather was Greek. After World War II, he went to Argentina because they were offering free residency, which is why there's so much European population in Argentina. And when he met my grandmother, he would tell me, he's like, todos los días me das carne y papa, so meat and potatoes. And she was like, no, te hago un pastel de papa un día, te hago carne asada con papa horneada. He was like, literally, it's steak and potatoes every single day. And so potatoes is a big one. I think they started to change a little bit. Some dishes will include rice, but more so like un arroz con pollo, which is the chicken completely chopped and then cooked with the rice, and it's yellow rice. Pasta is big because of the Italian influence. Like every 29th of the month, you eat gnocchi and you put money under your plate for prosperity to the next month. And that tradition came from people used to being paid monthly. By the 29th of the month, money was scarce. So you needed something that was hearty. And whether you made gnocchis de papa or gnocchis like from regular pasta wheat, it was filling and it was affordable. So the tradition is put money on your plate. So I would say potatoes and pasta are the primary starches.
That's so interesting. Just thinking about like putting the money on the plate every month. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's something that I do with my kids now. Like that, I mean, it's tradition every 29th of the month. February, you get copped out because you don't get the 29th until every 4 years. But yeah,
I was gonna say that. I was like, well, not this month, but
yeah, exactly.
that's awesome. I must look forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful. So let's complete the plate, right? So we got our proteins, we got our starch. What are some popular produce that you saw growing up?
So definitely a lot of carrots and tomatoes, like una ensalada de zanahoria. They love beets in Argentina. I don't like beets very much, to be honest with you. I will eat them, but like una ensalada de remolacha, very typical. And just any kind of green salad or like a sautéed spinach. I won't say like the produce was very elaborate growing up or what I see when I go visit, but a lot of different salads for sure. And anything that was kind of basic, like you weren't chopping vegetables all day and then like making a sauté out of it. It was more like it's your spinach or it's your sauteed carrots or things like that. It was kind of more basic in that standard. Like berenjena, it would be like, your eggplant would be more like in a cold salad too. Like they would put it in olive oil and vinegar and you would eat it that way. So I can't remember seeing, like thinking growing up, oh, I've never seen this vegetable going to Argentina that I hadn't seen in the US type of thing. But
Mhm.
also it could have been that I wasn't exposed to it. But those were like our traditional vegetables. They were more basic or very much a salad.
Yeah, it sounds like the consistency is more of like a colder
Yeah.
vegetables versus in some cultures you just see like a lot of hot sides or
Yeah.
everything's blended together. And then here it sounds like more singular
Yeah, exactly. Because you would
vegetables.
get like the warmth of the beef and the potato and then, or the pasta, and then you're getting your cold salad type of thing or your cold vegetable.
Interesting, which is something that was like a little culture shift for me, right? Like I grew up in the Valley, it was predominantly Hispanic with Mexican American Hispanic,
Hmm.
and I was just used to like hot sides. So when I went
Hmm.
to college and I started seeing more like salad bars and things like that,
Oh, wow.
that to
That
me
was
felt
different.
interesting because I wasn't used to cold. vegetables.
Yeah. Right, right. Yeah.
Was it a little bit of a shift for you when you were around other cultures and you saw more of like hot sides or?
Well, I think growing up in Miami, I was so lucky to be engulfed in so many other cultures. Like, truthfully, like Peruvian food is my favorite food. Like, I love ceviche, I love lomo saltado, like the herbs and spices and the different cold and warm plates. And growing up, obviously, around Cuban food. So I think I was exposed to enough to where it wasn't a culture shock to me
Mhm.
comparing them because I was so lucky to be in diverse. Any type of restaurant you want in Miami, you can have, right? That cuisine, especially when it came to Latin food. But definitely, I've lived in other places and just trying to find something that was more Argentine style, I couldn't find. It was more of like their Caribbean style or Mexican style food
Yeah.
and things more like Latin America that wasn't as available to me when I lived in Gainesville, Florida, or Savannah, or now living in Punta Gorda. Like I have to drive 3 hours to Miami to find something a little bit different.
That is very challenging. I am blessed living in Houston. I feel like whatever cultural
Oh yeah, whatever
food
you want.
I'm craving, we have it.
Mhm.
But it was very hard. Like I did live for a little bit in Raleigh, North Carolina, and
Mm,
I would have to drive 45 minutes to find like decent tacos because it's not just as available as it is
yeah,
in Houston.
exactly. We got in my small town, we got a Peruvian restaurant recently, and we go at least once a month because I'm like, I tell my husband, like, I'm getting the urge. I'm like, I need ceviche. Like, we have to go. Like, so luckily in Miami, I had that, which is great because I think nothing is, oh, this is so different for me because I was exposed to it growing up.
Yeah, gotcha. And you did mention one tradition, right, with the putting the money under the plate with the food. Do you have any other traditions that are Argentinian, maybe either for the holidays or just throughout the year related to food like that?
So I think for the holidays, definitely it's funny because they very much stick to their asados. I feel like every celebration is around asado. But growing up, my family made it a point to always integrate like American traditions with our Argentine traditions. So for Nochebuena, we would still maybe have a turkey, but we're still putting carne en la parrilla type of thing.
Yeah.
So they always want to integrate both. My mom came, she was the youngest of six. She came when she was 14. And so she did do part of high school here in the US. My grandparents always wanted to learn about the American culture, and my grandfather's sister actually had married an American soldier. That's how she ended up in the US at first after World War II. And so really integrating that and us growing up with it because we learned in school about the turkey for Thanksgiving and Christmas cookies. I mean, we just looked so different that I think growing up we had both, which was great. But we did have our typical like ensalada rusa is like potatoes, mayonnaise, like carrots and peas type of thing. So we would have still our traditional dishes, but things that, like pumpkin pie. We always loved them. My mom always made it, but it wasn't necessarily tradition to Argentina. But that's, I think, the wonderful thing about being exposed to other cultures is blending them all together. And also thinking about like my tios and tias, them marrying Venezuelan partners and Colombian partners and things like, and integrating some of that too was really great.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds, right? You get that Argentinian food and you get, like you mentioned, the American food, and then along the way, Venezuelan food. And as
Yeah.
people get married, it's interesting how food cultures change for a
Hmm.
variety of different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. So, sticking a little bit to the traditions that I was mentioning, and I always like explaining this question when I have a guest. So, I know in every culture, there's going to be like health beliefs tied to certain foods, right?
Hmm.
And whether it's like evidence-based or not is not the point because,
Hmm.
just a placebo effect can make a lot of
Yeah.
things effective. But just to be aware of what are these food cultural beliefs for certain foods related to health. Is there anything like that that you see in like the Argentinian food culture?
So definitely, I think growing up, like el caldito when you were sick was like a must. Didn't matter if you had a cold, if your head hurt, if you had a sprain. Caldo saves everything. Tomate el caldito, and then, un tecito con agua y limón if your throat hurts. I mean, with miel y limón. And then, of course, very traditional to Argentina is drinking mate. Mate is not only medicinal in a way, but it's also culture. It's also bringing people together. And mate will cure everything. If you need a caffeine spike, mate will do it. If you need to relax, mate will do it. If you just need to unwind, mate will do it type thing. So I think those were probably my top ones growing up. El caldito, like té con miel, and notice they're all liquids, and
Hmm.
then mate.
Like when you were pregnant or breastfeeding, did anyone tell you, oh, you should drink this or you should eat this or this will help
No,
with?
I got more of like you shouldn't eat. I remember having a craving with my first pregnancy for like freshly squeezed orange juice, being the Floridian that I am. And
Mhm.
my mom being like, "You can't drink that while pregnant." I was like, "Why, mom?" And she's like, "Because your sugar levels are going to go up and the baby's going to be addicted to sugar." And I was like, "¿Qué?" Like, I was like, Mom, first of all, do you know what I do for a living? Second, I'm like, that's not true. And I'm not jugging pounds of orange juice. It's literally like having a glass of orange juice in the morning, freshly squeezed type of thing. So there was more myths around what you couldn't do. You couldn't exercise,
Mhm.
super dangerous for a pregnant woman versus traditional things that would help. My mother-in-law is Guatemalan, and so I would hear things like needing to drink like certain batidos to like to help your milk come in type of thing, like really fortified like milkshakes. But other than that, no, it was more like what to stay away from. Like in Argentina, I'll tell you, I remember the biggest nutrition myth I heard was if you ate fruit after dinner, it'll stay at the top of your belly, it'll rot and become sugar and you gain weight. And I remember being like, ¿qué? Like things like that. So it was more like the fear versus the you have to.
Yeah. And which I think kind of those type of beliefs are what makes like social media so dangerous now, right? Because it was
Hmm.
already something that we would hear, and now we're having people like scream it in grocery aisles, shirtless,
Yeah,
kind
exactly. Or
of
dancing in the
perpetuating
aisle.
that
Yeah.
fear.
Yes, exactly.
So actually tell us a little bit about that. So thank you so much for sharing about your food culture, but I want to hear how you're culturally inclusive, especially in the media space. And like I mentioned, sometimes like these beliefs just get perpetuated, especially on social media. So what are you doing to combat those myths?
So I think for me, I'm the type of person on social media that I don't like to be angry and or I don't like to say like these people are wrong or what they're telling you. For me, it's all about positivity and like how can I show people like let's say pistachios. I've partnered with them for media segments in Spanish. And it's okay thinking of food that is culturally relevant and you try to make it as universal as possible because like we talked about like the Argentine cuisine is not the same as Mexican cuisine. And I feel like in the US, there's a misconception of what all Latin food looks like, right? And so for me, thinking, okay, like a pork loin, like they had a recipe that was pork loin encrusted pistachios with apricot. I was like, okay, we're going to make this a little bit different in how we cook it. And then we're going to stuff it with mango type of thing. So me trying to think about like, how can we adapt it? Things like that. So I always try to say, okay, this is why pistachios will be beneficial and may not be a food that they're accustomed eating. They're maybe used to more of like nueces, walnuts, and almonds, but why think about pistachios and those benefits? Like I made an horchata, which was a traditional drink, but then you can blend some pistachios in it too, strain it, and then you're having that pistachio benefit, but still having your tradition. It's not about making it better, but more like what you can add to it is always my approach, especially when I do Spanish media, because we never want to take away cultural foods at all. And we don't want to change them. It's more like, how do we add to them?
Wonderful. And I know brands really want that expertise that you have, like you mentioned, and especially will be much less likely to try something absolutely new. But if we just
Mm.
modify something we're already comfortable with, we're going to be more likely to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always my goal, right? It's just to provide that education. I mean, I even do it with my family. In Argentina, let's say for breakfast, it's very much like una, dos tostadas, and you're out for the day. Like there's no protein. I'm like, guys, can you add like some cottage cheese or some eggs? You know, like let's get some protein kind of thing. So like I'm like, don't take away the tostada facturas, which are like the Argentine pastries. I'm like, but let's just add something in there. Or let's add some fruit for some fiber. So always looking at that way without compromising the culture or what they're accustomed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know, like, in the Mexican American culture, it'll be very common that I hear a patient say like, "Oh, in the morning I just have like a piece of sweet bread with coffee, a piece of sweet bread with
Yeah.
coffee," right? And if you're talking to someone who maybe has diabetes or something like that, then you're going to want to add something in to slow
Hmm.
that down. So, like you mentioned, nuts, pistachios, any other type of protein would be like a good addition to kind of balance that out. And helping the patient with that, you're still keeping their culture, but you're just teaching them how to eat better for their health goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Which is something that's very challenging, and that's why it's so important to have more Latino and Latina dietitians because I feel like a lot of our Hispanic and Latino patients constantly hear that the cultural food is the problem, right? Like
Hmm.
that they need to eliminate things, they need to cut things out, when really just working with a dietitian, especially a culturally inclusive dietitian, like hopefully the people listening to this are trying to be, will teach you like how to work with your foods and still meet your health goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we were just talking about it before recording. I did a segment for Boise, Idaho in Spanish. And one of the questions was, how do people continue to include their cultural foods and should they be taking them away? And I had a conversation with a dietitian, English speaking only dietitian, and we talked about how the new dietary guidelines don't even mention cultural foods as opposed to the previous ones. And I hadn't even realized it because I'm the type of dietitian like you that we're always encouraging cultural foods. And you go through the 10 pages, there's not a single word about culture. And so I explained that in the interview, and I was like, you don't need to take away your foods. Like, our foods is part of who we are. And quite frankly, like, food enjoyment is nutrition as well. And if we're taking away the foods that we enjoy, then our health is not going to be optimal if we're miserable eating the foods that are better for you, which isn't the case because we know that Hispanic food is very much nutrient dense. It is very plant forward. But for me, it's like, okay, how do we continue to pass on that education? I think it's come a long way from like when I started school and started, in the hospital 16 years ago and providing diet education, but we have still so much more work to do. Like
Right.
we've come a long way. I feel like at least we talk about it now. We sit there and talk to patients and hear them. We're not telling them, no, you can't eat white rice. You have to eat brown rice. We're making strides.
Yes, I remember when I was an intern and me being a baby intern, walking into a room, meeting someone who, of course, a lot of people who end up with kidney failure have diabetes, right? So
Mhm.
he was already used to eating this one way for diabetes, where they had told him, you can't have white rice, you can't have, all of these things. And now the handout for the kidney diet one said, you can't have brown rice, you can't have like thing because of
Because
at
of
the
the
time because of the phosphorus. So he's like,
yeah.
how am I supposed to go back to white rice? I'm not supposed to have white rice for the diabetes. Now you're telling me. So it's so confusing when you're just completely eliminating certain foods instead
Right.
of talking about the overall pattern. You know what I mean?
Right. Agreed. And even then, like that education is confusing to the patient. I remember working in kidney disease. Obviously, you're much more of an expert, but like 10 years ago, I worked with dialysis patients. And the phosphorus that we have in ultra processed foods, those phosphates are really the ones that can negatively impact them. But if they're taking their phosphorus binders in a food like dairy or brown rice, where it's that naturally occurring phosphorus, their phosphorus binders are going to do what they need to do, right? So it's not like they're sitting there and eating 3 pounds of brown rice where that phosphorus is going to be detrimental. But if they're taking their medication, and the same thing, like looking at overall eating pattern, how much then of the phosphates are they consuming versus don't eat the brown rice, is A, very confusing to the patient, and it also is not correct information because if it's naturally occurring, it's different.
But yeah, exactly what you're saying. That's a big mission for me, is to try to educate not just patients, but healthcare professionals that the first thing to be cutting out, especially when we're trying to control potassium, phosphorus, whatever, should not be the plant-based foods. That should be like last resort.
Exactly, exactly. I agree with you.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about your cultural foods and everything you're doing in the nutrition space. For anyone who's listening, maybe if they happen to work for tomatoes or avocado and they want to work with you, how can they find you?
Sure, I'm on Instagram at nourish.con.gisela, Gisela. And or you can go to my website, giselabouvier.com. But yeah, I love talking about all things being Hispanic. I love being Hispanic. I love the way Spanish language unites us. And I'm so honored to have been here.
Yeah, of course. And then I know you're the co-host of a program.
Mhm.
Where do you see that?
So El Flash Latino is nationally syndicated. We're in 117 markets. It depends on where you live, but you can find a list on their website on elflashlatino.com. And it's a Spanglish style, like news entertainment show. So like when I got the opportunity, it just aligned so well because it's how I grew up in Miami.
Mhm.
And I love it. And we talk about all things celebrity, like farándula in English and Spanish. And it's wonderful. Never thought that my career would take me there, but there it is.
That's so awesome. And if anyone wants to check that out, you said elflashlatino.com.
Latino.com. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank
Awesome. Thank
you.
you again so much, Isala. If you are interested in supporting this podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/foodculturecurious. Or as always, you can support by sharing, following, or rating this podcast. Every click from y'all means the world to me. And now for a quick disclaimer. Food Culture Curious is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not take the place of medical advice from licensed healthcare professionals. If you need to seek medical advice, please speak to your healthcare provider. Thank you for listening.